local. This is Fox 12 Now.
Hello, everyone. This is Fox 12 Now. I'm Greg Nibbler. As always, thank you for joining us. I'd like to remind everybody that we are live streaming here every weekday, starting at 1 p.m. We're on Facebook, YouTube, our website, and of course our apps. So I do recommend downloading that Fox 12 Oregon app. Great way to watch the show, and then the segments that we get to have afterward. Also share them. Right now, we're talking about something that is very important for everybody. If you're watching live, the day is actually tomorrow. I'm talking about World Password Day on May 2nd this year, and that has to do with, well, it's pretty clear right there, I think, as far as your password, cybersecurity, and making sure that you're safe. Something that is easily overlooked by a lot of people, and it's easy to get comfortable and just feel like, oh no, I'm doing everything I should be doing. You might not be. So to talk about that right now, we've got Tony Sabaj, who's from Checkpoint, who's joining us here to talk about this. And Tony, thanks for being here. And I think to start off, what the question probably a lot of people have is, what is World Password Day?
So really, World Password Day is a day to really bring attention and awareness to password security and password best practices. It's really the key to our digital lives. And we hear about in the news all the time of websites being breached and passwords being stolen. And, I'd like to give you guys some tips on, how to make yourself as safe as possible in regards to passwords.
Yeah, I mean, we really do. It seems, there's always some kind of a breach. There's some organization that has passwords stolen or usernames. And I think it's a testimony to how good some of the bad actors are out there, some of these threats that are out there as far as they're able to do that. So being able to secure yourself and make sure that you're doing the right things is really great. So I think to start off, would love to hear what some of those recommendations are for people as far as making sure that their password's secure.
Yeah, so a couple of easy recommendations, easy to say but sometimes hard to follow, is password complexity and password length are two of the most important things you can do. And by complexity, I mean not just using simple words that are concatenated or put together, but using special characters, capital letters, ones. Lots of people like to transpose threes for E's and the @ signs for A's and ones for L's, and be able to create passwords that are complex, also have a length to them. So combine words that might mean something to you, but not mean something to, the general public. Don't use anything that's personally identifiable. Don't use your street name with your birthday at the end of it, because that's easily guessed. And with the advent of AI, people are using AI to guess passwords a lot better than just brute force or people.
Yeah, so AI really has increased their ability to figure out those passwords then.
Yeah, and really another thing that's, almost as important as the length and complexity is do not reuse passwords. And that's probably the biggest mistake people make. Most of us log on to a lot of sites with just our email address. We use the same email address over and over again, which is fine. Or we use a username that's, first initial, last name. So it's usually pretty easy to guess. And if you reuse passwords, you're probably reusing those passwords with the same usernames. And once a site is breached and that password is cracked, those bad actors and hackers will be like, oh, I cracked your Gmail password. You may not care if somebody gets into your Gmail, but you might be using that same user ID and password combination for your bank or something maybe a little bit more important than email, or, people get access to your email, then they can reset passwords. So don't reuse passwords and change them often, because they are going to get breached even if you have really secure passwords.
Now, when it comes to creating long passwords with multiple characters, and I definitely know that's what I should be doing, but memorizing those across multiple different sites can definitely be a challenge. I forget all the time. So what is the best way for storing those, or having a way to actually remember exactly what your password is for this site, for this site, for this site?
So probably the best way to store them is to use, Apple and Google platforms on phones, and even, Microsoft, and will suggest very random passwords for you. They're impossible to remember. You'll never remember them unless you have some kind of weird photographic memory. So I recommend using a password manager. There's lots of password managers out there. Some of them are free, some of them are very low cost. And what it does is it allows you to store your passwords securely, and they'll usually integrate with most apps and websites, so you don't have to type in your password. It'll pull it from your password manager. You have some sort of secure method of getting into your password manager. and using things like multi-factor authentication, not only to get into your password manager, but to get into really sensitive sites. So not only do you have to have a user ID and password, but you usually have to have some sort of secondary means of authentication, which is, something you have and something you know. So something you know is your password. Something you have is either a one-time code on a text message, which isn't the most secure, but still pretty good. You can use things like Google Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator, even the biometrics built into your phone or your personal computer, like the Face ID or a fingerprint ID, is a really good way of using multi-factor, or a second way that nobody can really spoof without, doing a, sci-fi thing of stealing your face or your fingerprints, in that kind of sense. So really setting up multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication everywhere where it's available on, the sites and the applications that you're using.
So go ahead and do that no matter what it is, set up that two-factor authentication.
Yeah, even if it's as simple as like you put in your phone number, it sends you a one-time text message, and you have to put that code in. The phones make it easy; they'll pull it from the last text message, so you're not even typing it in. But the biometrics are even more secure because you can spoof text messages and phone calls. It can happen if someone's really trying to target you.
What are some of the biggest mistakes that people do in getting comfortable with how they're using their passwords?
So, again, it's the reuse. It's having simple passwords that are easily cracked. The way passwords are breached is not somebody going to your, bank.com site and guessing your password, because if you authenticate 3 times, it's going to lock you out anyway. But what happens is when these organizations get breached, password files are downloaded, and those passwords aren't necessarily encrypted. They're called what's hashed. So what happens is it's a one-way algorithm. So if your password is password, it runs it through an algorithm that comes out with a unreversible hash of your password. And then when you type your password in on that site, it runs it through that same algorithm. And if the output matches, it knows you put in the right password. So most websites don't even know what your password is. They just know a hash of your password. So what happens is when those websites get breached, the hackers download that hash file, and then on the back end, they're running a brute force attack of just trying thousands of password combinations a second, so they can go through millions of password combinations, in a matter of minutes or hours, depending on the compute that they have available to them. So that's how passwords get breached. And then if you're reusing that password, it might be a benign, you don't care if someone hacks your, Gmail account that you haven't used in years, but you may have been reusing that password. So reuse them, change them, have, complex long passwords, use two-factor, use a password manager, and, don't write your passwords down and leave them on a sticky note next to your computer, because then anybody can see them, even with everybody, FaceTiming and, doing Zoom meetings. Your office and your home is on camera a lot more than people understand.
How often should you change your password?
It depends. There's that, trade-off between security and usability. You're not going to change them every day, because you would drive yourself crazy and you'd spend all your time changing passwords. Usually, 90 days is usually a decent amount of time. And then change them if you know that a site that you use was breached, then I would change that password and change anything that's associated with that password. If you are reusing passwords, and we're all guilty of it, I reuse passwords more often than I should. So if that site was breached and you're using that password, make sure you change it in all the places that you're using it. And even a lot of sites like, I have an iPhone right here. If I go into my password store on my iPhone, it actually will tell me, it will go to breach, the publicly breached information and say, hey, this password has actually been breached in another hack. May not be tied to me, but someone's used this password and it's been hacked before. So go ahead and change those. So that's actually right in, Google, or, the Google platform or the Apple platform will actually tell you if your password's been breached. And a lot of websites, when you put in your password, it'll tell you, hey, this is a known breach password, which is always going to be tried by, hackers in a brute force type of attack.
So pay attention to those notifications if you get something like that.
And there's even websites out there that you can go to that will allow you to put in a password. They're not saving your password, but they're doing that hash and saying, yeah, this password was part of a a known breach, and it's known to hackers as a a common or a previously used password.
So change that password. Do not use that one again.
Exactly.
Most definitely. Anything else that you think is important for people to know?
Simple things like don't share your password. Don't send your password over email or text to your, you know, to your friends, or if you're somehow sharing accounts. People share Netflix and streaming accounts all the time. If that password's the same as what you're using for banking, you've just told everybody you're sharing your Netflix account with your banking password. So don't share your passwords. Don't fall for phishing scams that I get emails all the time on like my personal email that says, "Oh, your Apple ID has been, breached. Click this link and change your password and type in your old password." Well, Apple's probably not going to send you that link, but if you do think your password's been breached, then go to the actual website itself. Don't click on the links in these phishing emails. If you think your Apple password or your bank password was breached, don't click on the link in the email. Go to bank.com or appleid.com and actually go in and change your password, as opposed to following the links in these emails that are most likely suspicious from a phishing perspective, and they're just trying to get you to input your credentials, and now they have your password, and now they can easily breach your account or that particular website.
So watch out for all of those. Yeah, don't click through. Go to the actual site and change your password. I mean, a lot of great advice. So for everybody out there, World Password Day, it's probably something you should think about every day, but it's a good reminder, to think about it. And I think one thing I always like to emphasize too is it doesn't matter how secure you think you are or how savvy you think you are. I feel like everybody's doing something that they probably shouldn't be doing. So it's good to think about that stuff.
Exactly.
Tony, thank you very much for joining us today, and going over all this. Again, important things for people to know and be aware of.
Thanks, Greg.
You bet. And for everybody watching too, again, this is Fox 12 Now. You can feel free to share this segment because maybe there's somebody in your life who's not doing a very good job of that, of securing their passwords. So you can share this on Facebook, YouTube, our website, or our apps, of course. I do recommend everybody downloading that Fox 12 Oregon app just because it's a nice, easy way to watch this show and stay up to date with everything else that's going on here with Fox 12 Oregon, be it breaking news, be it more segments on here, our regular newscasts, all of that. If there is breaking news, we are here between 1 and 4 p.m. every weekday, and we will have that for you. And then that's outside of our other newscasts. So this is the place to go for that. And if that happens, I'll be here to bring that to you. Right now, we're signing off. I'm Greg Nibbler. This is Fox 12 Now.